To put it bluntly, the most likely outcome of following through with the current virtual election plan is an election that's less democratic.
Tonight, the position of National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations is up for grabs, but already there are calls to postpone the vote.
In Alberta here, our numbers are very, very high, and it's certainly in our communities as well.
The Métis Nation of Alberta plans a series of clinics to get citizens vaccinated. And a Cree Elder is among those receiving Manitoba's highest honor. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. The first 48 hours of the Echequan Commission in Quebec have come and gone. A handful of family witnesses testified about the day Joyce died at Joliet Hospital. As Lindsay Richardson explains, the details that are emerging paint a grim picture of her final moments.
It's day 2 of the Echequan Commission, so Carole Dubé put on a good tie and a strong front for the next round of hearings. Carole took the stand yesterday, telling the coroner Joyce tried to avoid Joliet Hospital because in the past, nurses there had made racist remarks and had pressured her to terminate her pregnancies. His testimony struck a chord with former MMIWG Commissioner Michelle Odette. Odette heard her share of testimony during the MMIWG National Inquiry, but came to Trois-Rivières to lend her support as more revelations come to light.
We walk beside the family and we support them to understand how the system works or to walk through that system with them.
Taking the stand on day 2 was Joyce's sister-in-law, Jemima Dubé, who with Odette rehearsed her testimony about how she rushed to the hospital after seeing Joyce's live video. Except Jemima was too emotional to read her statement in open court, so Odette stepped in, drawing tears from everyone in the courtroom and the overflow room. APTN obtained a copy of Jemima's statement. Quote, "I looked for Joyce and no one was helping me. I circulated until nurses saw me. It's like I was invisible. I crossed 2 nurses, leaving a room exchanging bizarre looks. I felt the fear. I knew Joyce was already dead." By the time Joyce's daughter arrived at her bedside and took this video, Joyce was gone, her wrists and waist in restraints. Health officials told Dubé they pumped 2 liters of blood from Joyce's stomach, and her death was ruled natural, so no autopsy would be performed. During their testimony, provincial police officers said they interviewed more than 20 witnesses at the time, but didn't have enough information to lay criminal charges. Odette thinks the story is not over yet.
Let's wait what the coroner will give us as recommendation or what the family will say at the end of this process, because I think we should keep all the energy and the support to them during the next couple of weeks.
The hearings continue next week when the nurses from Joliet Hospital retell their side of the story anonymously. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Trois-Rivières, Quebec.
The Assembly of First Nations will elect a new National Chief in July. Current Chief Perry Bellegarde is not seeking re-election. The only person who's said he's running so far is Anishinaabe-Aski Nation Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler. The election will be held virtually, but as Jamie Pashagumscum reports, some want a postponement.
Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafont is a former Saskatchewan judge. She says an election during the pandemic is not appropriate.
Which, is really painful. It's a really painful time for people have stopped having ceremonies. They've stopped connecting for public safety reasons. And we're not in a mindset to be able to meet and discuss things fully at this time. And I think by fall and winter, we could be in a much better position to be able to do that.
Turpel-Lafont wrote a letter to the AFN Executive Committee to delay it until next December, but it will go through as planned. But Turpel-Lafont sees a downside.
As I say in my letter, to put it bluntly, the most likely outcome of following through with the current virtual election plan is an election that's less democratic, less fair, less accessible, and it will result in a weakened ability for the AFN to represent and advocate for First Nation. We could very much get a result where someone's elected and very quickly removed.
Terpelefon points out that there has never been a female national chief. No women have declared an intention to run yet, but Terpelefon says
In
the COVID
healthcare in
pandemic
BC.
could have something
And
to
I
do with
found
it.
that Indigenous women and First Nations women were 4 to 5 times more likely to get a confirmed diagnosis of COVID, and were bearing the biggest burden of caring for people with COVID and managing safety in their community. So not only is this virtual election coming in a way that does not accommodate accessibility, but it doesn't acknowledge the position of women.
Sheila North is a former regional Grand Chief in Manitoba, and she was asked to run for National Chief.
I have to be closer to home to be part of the healing process and going forward with my community and with my family. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I decided to stay in Manitoba.
APTN News reached out to the AFN for comment on their decision to proceed, but didn't hear back as we went to air. The nomination period for National Chief ends June 2nd, with the elections taking place on July 7th. Jamie Pashagamska, APTN National News, Ottawa.
And that isn't the only AFN news we have for you. Earlier today, APTN revealed the organization issued contracts to a business based out of a home owned by the National Chief and his spouse in Ottawa. You can find that story on our website. And the Manitoba government has granted final licenses to Manitoba Hydro for the Churchill River diversion. That diversion sends water from the Churchill River to power stations. However, the decision does come with some conditions. Manitoba Hydro must collaborate with communities to enhance conservation and to identify areas for development that could bring additional jobs and opportunities. Also included in the final licenses, Manitoba Hydro is required to report annually on its engagement with Indigenous communities on the continued operation of these projects. NDP MP Nikki Ashton criticized the federal government for not stepping up.
In the past, the federal government has helped First Nations to defend their rights. This led to the negotiation of the historic Northern Flood Agreement. But what about today, in this era of reconciliation? Where is the federal government? Will the federal government step in and support OPCN and TCN as they defend their rights and protect their nations?
We have to take a short break, but still to come, Dr. Tom Wong, the Chief Medical Officer of the First Nations Health Authority at Indigenous Services, joins us.
From shaving to soaking and stretching, prepping moose hide for tanning is a long process. I'm Tamara Pimentel, and I joined this family on their journey to keep this tradition alive. I'll bring you the full story next week on APTN National News.
Welcome back. Nunavut's COVID-19 case count continues to rise. 12 new cases were announced today, bringing the total to 76 active cases, all in the capital of Iqaluit. It has been a full month since public health restrictions were placed upon Iqaluit. Despite those measures, many continue to ignore the public health orders to wear a mask, social distance, and only gather with those in your household. According to Nunavut's health minister, unless Iqaluit gets this caught, summer is at risk.
We have a very short summer, and it seems it's getting shorter by the day. You know, if we want to have our usual summer parties outside and gatherings outside, for Iqaluit and everywhere, but especially here in Iqaluit, it means stopping your gatherings now. If people want to come to your house for a party, tell them to go away.
The Métis Nation of Alberta held a COVID-19 vaccination clinic in Edmonton at the end of March. Now they have 3 more clinics set to go in the coming weeks. A clinic from May 15th to the 16th will be held in Lac La Biche, in Fort McMurray on May 26th, and in Calgary from May 29th to the 30th. Also, Treaty 8 First Nations have partnered with the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations to hold a COVID-19 vaccination clinic at the River Cree in the Enoch Cree Nation from May 16th to the 19th.
In Alberta here, our numbers are very, very high, and it's certainly in our communities as well. And so we do have a lot of people reaching out to us saying, what else can we do? So all we're attempting to do is make sure we have places available where our people will feel comfortable in coming and getting those shots.
Manitoba has seen COVID case numbers and variants of concern rise in younger people. So a new vaccine awareness campaign is underway, which focuses on encouraging young First Nations people in the province to get vaccinated. A campaign called Protect Our People is encouraging vaccine uptake among younger First Nation people throughout Manitoba. Some are choosing not to get vaccinated because of misinformation and fears about the virus and the vaccines. Protect Our People hopes to address this.
We now have demographics that are hesitant to take the vaccine. And so I think it's important for us to clarify the facts around the vaccine and also to erase any myths around what the vaccine's intent is for. And so we're big believers in the science. We're going to believe the experts.
The campaign focuses on those aged 18 to 35, primarily through social media platforms. It's led by numerous First Nations organizations in Manitoba, along with the First Nation influencers. Influencers involved include comedian and TikTok influencer Sherry McKay, musicians William Prince and Leonard Sumner, and entrepreneur Brandy Woodhouse.
Well, it kind of hit close to home too because my family and I caught COVID in November, and it was a real traumatizing experience. For me, it's all about protecting our elders. We really cherish our elders and we really love our elders.
A big part of the campaign, along with social media, is using hashtags and filters to connect to the younger audience. And there will also be public radio service announcements throughout Manitoba in English and various Indigenous languages. Gerald Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg. COVID-19 vaccines are rolling out across the country. So what does that mean for Indigenous populations? For an update on the current status of vaccinations, Dr. Tom Wong, the Chief Medical Officer of the First Nations Health Authority at Indigenous Services Canada, joins us. Hi, Dr. Wong. Thanks for joining me. What percentage of Indigenous people have been vaccinated, and do we know if the vaccine hesitancy or refusal is expected to stall that number at a certain percent?
Yeah, thank you very much, for your question. As of May the 11th, a total of 416,106 vaccine doses have been administered in 690 communities for First Nations on reserve, for Inuit and Nangat, and in the territories. That translates into over 60% of adults living in those communities with at least one dose. And for the second dose, we are very encouraged to see that at this point, between 29 and 33%, of the adults living in those communities have received the second dose of the vaccine.
So, Dr. Wong, do we have national data on infection after at least one vaccine?
Yeah, one of the things that it's happening is since January, as we have been ramping up the vaccine efforts in collaboration with Indigenous communities and with the provinces and territories, as more and more adults in First Nations communities are receiving vaccines, we're actually seeing that the number of COVID case counts dropped by over 80% compared to 4 months ago.
So can we mix vaccines? Like, say somebody gets the AstraZeneca shot first, can they then mix it with a shot of a different vaccine?
At this point, there's research studies being done internationally, in particular for example, in United Kingdom, where they are looking at the mix and match of different brands of vaccines. So the mRNA vaccine mixing together, with the AstraZeneca vaccine. And they're doing that, and they're looking at the comparison. And very recently, the UK group had actually shared some preliminary data, on the reactogenicity, meaning that if one were to actually, let's say, take Pfizer for dose 1 and Pfizer dose 2 versus AstraZeneca dose 1 and dose 2, and versus mixing, Pfizer first and then AstraZeneca and AstraZeneca, Pfizer. What they've seen is that the participants, have been actually reporting, no major, safety issues. But of course, the side effects that's self-limited, that last for a few days, as we've all, been experiencing over the past few months. We've seen that those side effects are there, but those are self-limiting. And not life-threatening side effects. With the side effects, what they're seeing is that for those individuals who actually get the combo, the mixing and matching of Pfizer together with AstraZeneca versus the homologous, which is either the Pfizer or the AstraZeneca. What they found is that the side effects tend to be the local side effects or the fever and the chills. Those side effects tend to actually be more common and stronger side effects. What that actually gives an early signal is that the body actually reacts, to the combination of the mRNA vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine very well, and that may actually give us a glimpse on, whether it is effective or more effective to actually, be having the combination with the first dose of one type of the vaccine, and then the second dose with another type of vaccine. That gives a glimpse into that. However, that data is not there. That data, hopefully, in the next month, hopefully our UK colleagues will be able to share internationally, some of the observations and some of the findings. But looking at the side effects, one can actually raise the question whether the protection, the level of protection, the immune response will actually be may actually be better with the mixing of the two different types of vaccines.
All right, Dr. Wong, thank you so much for joining us. That is Dr. Tom Wong joining us from Ottawa.
You're welcome.
More break, but coming up, the countdown is on for the Junos, and Dene singer-songwriter Leela Gilday is up for 2 awards. We'll tell you which ones when we come back. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Our very own Lee Wilson captured this photo of an eagle getting a look around from closer to the ground. That's a great shot from our Lee Wilson there. Be sure to send us your photos to share at aptn.ca and let us know the who, when, and the where, and your photo might be our next photo of the day. And now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, 15 in a mix of sun and cloud in Charlottetown and 19 in sun in Halifax. 3 degrees in Nain and +7 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. 19 in sun and cloud in Quebec City and 20 in clouds in Val-d'Or. 21 in sun in Toronto and 21 in sun in Sault Ste. Marie. 20 degrees in sun in Wawa and 18 in sun in Thunder Bay. 8 degrees in sun and cloud in Thompson and 12 in cloud and sun in Norway House. 23 in rain in Winnipeg and 22 in sun in Dauphin. 24 in rain in Regina and 23 in rain in Saskatoon. 14 degrees and raining in La Ronge and 17 degrees and rain in Buffalo Narrows. And over in the west, 20 degrees and a mix of sun and cloud in Peace River and 19 in sun and cloud in Grand Prairie. 22 in sun in Calgary and 25 in sun in Medicine Hat. 18 in sun in Vancouver and 17 in sun in Tofino. 17 in a mix of sun and cloud in Smithers and 16 in sun and cloud in Fort Nelson. 15 in sun and cloud in Dawson and 13 in rain in Beaver Creek. 7 degrees in rain in Fort Simpson and 15 in Trout Lake. 4 degrees in Colville Lake and 7 degrees in Fort McPherson. -8 in sun and cloud in Baker Lake and a -9 in sun and cloud in Chesterfield. -5 in snow in Arctic Bay and a -5 in Resolute. This year, 12 Manitobans have been chosen to receive the Order of Manitoba. Among them is Cree Elder Ruth Christie. Christie has dedicated her life to preserving Indigenous history, as well as educating others on the role Indigenous people had in shaping the province and the country. Christie used to participate in reenactments at Lower Fort Garry, the site where First Nations in Canada signed Treaty 1. She has been recognized for her work locally and internationally. A natural-born storyteller, Christie says she picked up the gift from her grandmother.
My grandmother encouraged me to, she shared a lot of oral stories of our families, and she told my parents that I had a gift, and I could remember things from when I was 2 years old. So she continued to tell me stories about our ancestors.
Tonight on APTN Investigates is John Murray's For Trust or Profit. The show was scheduled for last week but didn't air. John joins us now from Edmonton to tell us why the show had to be rescheduled. Good afternoon, John. Thanks for joining us. So last week everyone was expecting to see a new episode of APTN Investigates. What happened?
Well, Daryl, APTN Investigates got a threatening letter from a First Nation not even named in the story. But we had to act fast, and despite the fact that the letter was not about the community in the story, we had to act fast. So, although the episode didn't make it to air last week, we're going to be airing the episode in its entirety tonight. There will be no changes whatsoever. And of course, I would be very interested in speaking to the community that sent the letter.
So what can we expect to see in tonight's episode?
We visit the community of Minnesota Lake Cree Nation, and many community members there are frustrated with the state of their community's infrastructure, and they want to see some change. They don't know what their leadership is doing to help them, and the shortcomings are pretty obvious, as you'll see in tonight's episode. It isn't clear if the problem's governance or if it's something else, but community members want answers.
So, John, is this a widespread problem for First Nations?
Well, we all know housing, roads, water, and many other things communities rely on are in a state of crisis in many First Nations. So yes, there are widespread infrastructure problems, and sometimes it comes from poor leadership. In this case, the community uses Indian Act rules for governance, and we found that system lacking in measures to support grassroots community members' concerns. As one expert says, it's a system that sends accountability to Ottawa, not back to community members. And let's be clear, because a system is corruptible doesn't mean those who are in it are corrupt. Many First Nations work well under the Indian Act system, but for many First Nations, self-government is about getting out from under the thumb of the Indian Act. Métis citizens weren't just concerned about what's happening, they were concerned about how their community would look to the rest of Canada. We were approached by one community member, and she was concerned and even angry that we were showing their homes on national TV. So one thing that is clear, people care about their community, and we found that in Métis.
All right, John, definitely look forward to watching that. That's APTN's John Murray in Edmonton.
Thanks, Daryl.
That's all the time we have for this Friday edition of APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Have yourselves a safe and healthy weekend.